In late 1991, the Soviet Union, a superpower built on 70 years of ideology and steel, disintegrated. The economic crash that followed was swift, brutal, and apocalyptic. Factories closed, savings vanished, and a generation was left reeling by the chaos of hyperinflation and a desperate scramble for survival. That was a catastrophe defined by a political implosion, a self-inflicted wound. But today, Russia faces a new, looming economic disaster. It is a crisis that is slower, more insidious, and ultimately, far more structural and irreversible than the collapse of the USSR. We are not watching a sudden political explosion. We are witnessing the cold, calculated execution of a national economy. This is not a political crash. This is a technological strangulation. Don't be fooled by the Kremlin statistics. Beneath the facade of a war-fueled boom, a time bomb is ticking. And when it detonates, it will leave Russia permanently crippled, technologically isolated, and economically inferior for decades. This is the story of the Sanctions Timebomb. The official narrative is one of resilience. Moscow boasts record military production, low unemployment, and a gross domestic product that refuses to buckle. They claim that the Western sanctions, the most severe financial penalties ever imposed on a major economy, have failed. But what you are looking at is not a resilient economy, it is a war economy. The Kremlin has simply thrown trillions of rubles at the problem, flooding its defense sector with money and people, forcing a hyper-focus on military output. This creates a temporary, artificial surge in manufacturing, masking the decay everywhere else. It's a classic Soviet economic fix: prioritize tanks and missiles, and let everything else starve. Look closer at the actual data. Since 2022, Russia's budget deficit has ballooned to historic highs. They are funding their military surge by burning through the financial reserves they spent years accumulating, draining their national wealth fund at an unsustainable rate. They are literally turning national savings into artillery shells. Meanwhile, the value of the ruble is a managed disaster. Yes, the central bank can temporarily prop it up with high interest rates, but those rates, sometimes soaring past 16%, are a massive brake on the non-military civilian economy. No business can sustainably borrow and invest when capital is that expensive. This is the core trade-off: guns over growth. They are achieving military output now at the cost of all future economic potential. And that brings us to the first component of the time bomb: the destruction of Russia's long-term productive capacity. The USSR crash was painful because the political system failed, leading to massive immediate shortages. The current Russian crisis is far more dangerous because it is targeting the very structure of the economy, its ability to innovate, compete, and generate wealth in the 21st century. Sanctions are not just about freezing bank accounts. They are about cutting off the supply chain for everything modern. The central damage comes from the export controls on high-tech and dual-use goods, microchips, specialized machinery, precision tools, and advanced software. Every modern economy, from cars to oil production, relies on these Western components. Russia cannot manufacture advanced semiconductors, nor can it produce the sophisticated machine tools needed to run an efficient, modern factory. In the past, Russia was integrated into the global supply chain, purchasing these vital components. Now, that pipeline is severed. Russian businesses are forced into one of two damaging options: dismantle and cannibalize, taking parts from existing equipment to keep others running. A practice seen in the Soviet era and now reportedly rampant in the aviation and energy sectors. This is not maintenance, it is managed decay. The gray market and intermediaries, buying inferior, older, or easily traceable substitutes from friendly nations, often at massive markups and with crippling logistical delays. This parallel import scheme is inefficient, expensive, and ensures Russia is always using last-generation technology. This structural decay guarantees that Russia's technology will fall further behind every year, widening the gap between it and its Western and Asian competitors. When the war economy eventually slows, the civilian economy that remains will be a hollowed-out, technologically obsolete husk. To understand the depth of this crisis, we must look at two historically critical Russian industries: energy and aviation. First, energy. Russia's economy is built on oil and gas, the lifeblood of the state budget. Extracting resources from Siberia requires complex Western technology, specialized drilling equipment, high-pressure pumps, and seismic software. Exxon, Shell, and BP didn't just extract. They provided the know-how and the machines. Now they are gone. Russia cannot replicate the most sophisticated horizontal drilling techniques used in deep water and Arctic projects. Over time, as existing wells are depleted and new fields become technically unfeasible to develop without foreign help, oil and gas production will inevitably become less efficient and more costly. The sanctions are a slow-acting poison on the very source of Russia's wealth. Second, aviation. Russia's civilian fleet is dominated by Boeing and Airbus jets. With the supply of parts, maintenance, and vital software updates cut off, these planes are grounded. Russian airlines are reportedly scraping spare parts from planes parked on the tarmac, hoping to keep a fraction of their fleet flying. This creates massive safety risks and fundamentally destroys the ability of Russia to maintain a modern, reliable, large-scale air travel network, essential for a country of its size. This is the true measure of the disaster. The Soviet Union had its own, albeit inefficient, technological sphere. Modern Russia had integrated globally. The sanctions haven't just isolated Russia. They have systematically demodernized its critical infrastructure. The economy is not adapting, it is regressing. An economy is not just made of machines and oil, it is built on human capital. And Russia's most valuable, most mobile asset is fleeing. Following the 2022 invasion, hundreds of thousands of highly educated professionals, especially in the crucial IT, finance, and creative sectors, left Russia. This brain drain is an incalculable long-term cost. These are the entrepreneurs, the coders, and the managers who would have formed the core of a future, diversified, non-commodity economy. They are now building industries in Dubai, Tbilisi, and Berlin instead of Moscow. This loss is compounded by the capital drain. Billions of dollars in foreign direct investment has been withdrawn, and the private Russian wealth that remains is constantly seeking a way out. Foreign companies that have left, from McDonald's to Renault, haven't just closed stores. They've destroyed the systems, the training programs, and the market-driven culture they once fostered. The vacated assets are often sold for a pittance to Russian state-aligned entities, a transfer of ownership that ultimately destroys competition and efficiency. The human and capital drains ensure that even if the geopolitical crisis were to end tomorrow, Russia would be facing the mammoth task of rebuilding its economy with a diminished talent pool and zero foreign investment. A scenario far bleaker than the one faced by the newly independent states after 1991. How is Russia still generating revenue? The answer lies in a financial paradox enabled by the war, the pivot east. Russia is now forced to sell oil and gas almost exclusively to a handful of large buyers, primarily China and India. While this keeps the cash flowing, it fundamentally changes Russia's negotiating power. They are selling at significant discounts, the friendship discount, and are often paid in non-Western currencies like the Chinese yuan or the Indian rupee. This creates a new problem, the currency trap. The yuan and rupee are not freely convertible, globally dominant currencies like the euro or the dollar. Russia now has billions of dollars worth of revenue sitting in banks in nations that may not allow that money to be easily converted back into the Western-made equipment they desperately need. They are rich in rubles and yuan, but poor in hard currency and technological access. This dependency creates a strategic vulnerability. China and India gain immense leverage over Russia, dictating terms and prices, transforming Russia from a co-equal energy supplier to a subordinate partner in a new economic bloc. The USSR, for all its flaws, was economically independent. Modern Russia is becoming a junior economic vassal. For the average Russian, the economic disaster is measured not in GDP charts, but in the relentless erosion of their savings. This is the inflationary rot. While official statistics are debatable, the cost of living is rising dramatically. State military spending is pouring money into a domestic market that is simultaneously shrinking in its capacity to produce goods. Too many rubles are chasing too few products. The effect is immediate. Cars, electronics, and imported foods become prohibitively expensive. Prices for everything from basic appliances to medicine are soaring due to reliance on expensive, circuitous gray market imports. The government can fix the ruble's exchange rate, but it cannot fix the price of a washing machine. The state's solution, raising the key interest rate, is a painful tourniquet, not a cure. It attempts to suck money out of the economy to slow inflation, but it crushes any hope of private investment and leaves the consumer holding the bag. The average citizen is forced to accept a future where their money buys less, their consumer choices are restricted, and their country is slowly withdrawing from the economic cutting edge. The catastrophe of the Soviet crash was the sound of a wall hitting the ground. The catastrophe facing Russia today is the sound of a system slowly seizing up. The USSR had an economic model that was unsustainable, but it was self-contained. When it collapsed, it had a chance to rebuild and integrate. Modern Russia has had its integration revoked. The sanctions time bomb is ticking because the damage is compound. Its wealth is locked in currencies it can't use. Its industry is starved of the technology it can't build. Its future is being exported by the talent it cannot keep. It is a slow-motion economic crash where the country gets poorer, weaker, and more dependent every single day. The consequences will be felt long after the current conflict ends, defining Russia's status as a technologically dependent, second-tier commodity power for the rest of the 21st century. Understanding the true, long-term impact of financial warfare is crucial to understanding the future geopolitical landscape. But Russia isn't the only nation facing existential economic strain. Next week, we reanalyzing China's demographic time bomb and how Xi Jinping's policies are crippling the world's manufacturing superpower. And before you go, tell us in the comments, which nation do you believe is next to face an irreversible economic crisis? Your thoughts drive our research. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep-dive geopolitical analysis every single week.